Good morning. We're learning as a schus for Shleima for Ilan Chaye Basarach and schus for the neshama of Meir Ben Elazar. We're on the Mishnah on Daf Nun Ches Amid Beis, about 15 lines from the bottom. Zok the Mishnah. Achuzas Hadam is someone who is a seizing of the blood. Vahamushenes got smoke inhalation. Vahamutznenes got overcome by cold. Not someone, I should say, an animal. V'sha'achla hardufni, ate this substance called hardufni. There's the Mishnah. Sam ha'mavis lebehema, Rashi says. So there's poisonous to animals, as the Gemara will make clear. V'sha'achla tzoyas tarnagoyim, an animal that ate waste from chickens. V'sha'shasa mayim haroyim, drank bad water. We know that humans, we are enjoined to not drink water that was left out because of a chash that the snakes will inject their venom into the uncovered water. But animals are not so smart and they drank it. All of these are ksher. None of these make the animal a treifa. It could kill them or it could not kill them, but it's not a death sentence. It's not an inevitable death sentence. Achla sam hamavis, if it ate sam hamavis, which the Gemara will define later on, oy shehikisha, it's a kind of poison, oy shehikisha nachash, or is bitten by a snake, muteres mishum treifa, it's mutter to eat because of kashrus, asur mishum sakanas nefashis. However, you can't eat it because it's dangerous for a person to eat such a behemoth. So Gemara, Amar Shmuel. Halita chiltis, if one, halita is, I think, the forcing an animal to eat something. So if you force-fed an animal chiltis, which is like as we're going to see, a very sharp, physically sharp type of plant, treifa. It makes the animal treifa. My time is the Gemara, the minka v'lehu because the chiltis will pierce the intestines of the animal, which makes it a treifa. Maser Rav Shizbi, he asks from the following brayso: Achuzas hadam, an animal that has a seizing of the blood, which is essentially kind of fever, vamushenes, or inhaled smoke, v'sha'achla hardufni, it ate hardufni, v'sha'achla treias tarnagoyim, it ate treias tarnagoyim, v'shas mayim aroyim, it drank the bad water, or if it was forced to eat teya, which the Gemara will explain in a minute. Rashi says, Tura balaz, the Esev maru ma'oid. It's a very bitter grass of chiltis, or this chiltis, which we had just mentioned, that we said it's a treifa. Upilplin and peppers. Achla sam hamaves, and it ate sam hamaves, ksheira. All these things are kosher. If it was bitten by a snake, or if it was bitten by a rabid dog, it doesn't mean it's inevitably going to die. It's also It's a very interesting thing. Look, we always talk about treifa as being that it's inevitable, it's going to die. But if it's too inevitable, obviously a rabid dog, there's no cure to this day for rabies. Once a person is already infected by rabies, it's 100% death rate. So this animal is definitely going to die. But since it's so rapid, it's not considered a treifa. That's considered the animal's dying. It means if an animal dies of old age, it's not a treifa. Or even if it's going to die of old age and you shecht it a minute before when it's about to expire, that's not a treifa. That's an animal that was going to die. It has to be that it has a structural defect that makes it that it's incompatible with life. But Vices rabies doesn't do that. It just makes that it dies very quickly. In any case, so those are the two things that mutaris mishum treifa, asur mishum hakanim fashis. So you have two kashas. First of all, chashas chiltis achiltis. In the brayso, we included chiltis as things that are safe. And Shmuel had said that chiltis is a treifa. And kash samamavis is samamavis. They put the Brisa put samamavis amongst the things that are kosher. And we had previously put samamavis amongst those things that are muteres mishum treifa asur mishum sakon nefashos in the Mishnah. So chiltis like kasha kam ba'olin kam bekrota. Depends if you're talking about the leaves or the seeds. The leaves are not dangerous. They're not good for the animal, but they don't cause holes in the bnei ayin. The seeds are hard, and that's what causes it to become a treifa. That's what Shmuel was talking about. Depends if it's something that's poisonous for animals or poisonous for human beings. Something that's poisonous for animals, even if the animal ate it, it still is not dangerous to humans. But if it's a poison for humans, then it's going to be usher because it's the usher for a person to eat it. If we say the samhamavis over there in the Brisa is talking about not the samhamavis for a person, but samhamavis, something that's only dangerous to an animal, that was hadufni, like we said in the Mishnah. We saw Rashi touched it. Samhamavis, that's something that's dangerous for animals. So come on, Trey Gavi samhamavis, the two examples of a poison for animals. My teya, one of the things we had mentioned in the Brisa is teya. Rav Yehuda, ikra de miriyasa. It's the root of some bitter type of grass. Rav Yehuda, hayman da achla tilsa takli chiltis. Someone who eats 3 shkolims worth of weight of chiltis, aliba rekana on an empty stomach, mishtaleach mashche. Rashi describes this graphically. Shalech mashche nifshat oirei, his skin will fall off. Shachiltis mechamamase ma'oid, will give him a very high fever. V'chzase kadacha shekern shakal plion. He's going to get with a very high fever, which will cause him to shed his skin. Amravavo b'didi havi ovda. I had an example of achli chad takla chaltisa. I ate 1 measure of chiltis, so only 1/3 of this. V'iloi di yasvi maya, had I not sat down in cool water immediately, I would have lost my skin. Kiyamti ba'atzi, I was mechayev in myself. Hachachma techaya ba'aleha. Chachma will be mechayev, its owners. You should know what you're doing. This is if anyone says, I'll be Shem Epsayim Hashem, said you should educate yourself and exercise and take care of your health. Rav Yosef, Hayman da achol shitzuri bei, someone who eats 60 eggs, barboy goizi and 40 nuts, beshev butisa de parchi. Rashi says it's kind of seeds of tzlaf. I think it's gol nuts, some kind of capers. Rashi says, yeah, karpir. V'shasi reviyasa dedufsha. He drinks a revius of honey. Betkufas tamas in the summer. Ali berekna on an empty stomach. Misaker talya deliboy. He's going to uproot his heart. So Rashi says, kol iker chiba liba neker. His heart is going to be taken out of its moorings. Doesn't say. It sounds like it's going to be fatal. Hahu bar tavia, the asul lebei reish galusa. There was this type of deer that was brought to the reish galusa to have a mafsek karen basraisa. Its rear leg was cut. But ge Rav at Tzemes Hagidin. Rav checked at Tzemes Hagidin, which is a place where the sinews all gather, to check if that was cut. Like we said before, that would make it into a treifa. But actually, he found it to be kosher. Sava l'meicha minei. He's going to eat from it. But umtza. He's going to eat some nice raw meat from it. Amle Shmuel lechayish ma'alin kuri. Shmuel said to him, it's true that it's not a treifa, but since there's this cut, it's missing its leg, maybe it was bitten by a snake in that spot, and you don't know about it, and it's injected with poison. Amle ma'itakan. He said, what's the eitzah to check? Noisre betanura diu badik nafshe. You put it into a tanur, and you'll see if it's poisoned, it will reveal itself. Usfa nafal tilchi tilchi. You put it into the oven, and the taka disintegrated. The poison weakened the fabric of the basar, and therefore caused it to fall apart. Chari Shmuel ala de Rav. Shmuel said about Rav that he was saved from eating this poisonous meat. No tragedy will befall a tzaddik. Rav said about Shmuel, gave him the Eitzah, Kol Roz Anaslah. The Rebbe Shalom doesn't keep any secrets from his those who are close to him, and that's why you knew the proper Eitzah of what to do. Zok the Mishnah. This is a very interesting Gemara. It's going to give us education that will be helpful to us with our kids about how to identify kosher and non-kosher animals. The actual animals, which animals are kosher and which are not. Zok the Mishnah. Simone behema v'chaya nemru min ha-Torah. The simonim of what is a kosher animal, what's not, are given in the Torah, right? It says in the Torah, Zois ha-chaya shetechelu mikol ha-behema shel haaretz. This is what you can eat from all those animals that are on the earth. Kol mafreses parsa v'shesha sasa shesa. Anything that has a split hoof, that's a split foot that's completely split by its hoof. Ma'ala geira b'behema, that chews its cud by the behema, oisa techelu, that you can eat. The pasuk starts with chay and ends with behema. They all have the same simone kashrus. It's not really being machalik between them. Behema can sometimes mean chay, and chay can mean behema. The Mishnah continues, v'simone ha'oif le'nemru. There are no simonim for a kosher bird. Avla amru chachamim, but chacham, that means the Torah doesn't give simonim, and the Torah identifies those that are not kosher. Anything that are not those 24 are going to be kosher. But the chachamim gave simonim to help us. That happens to be the case. As we'll see, a lot of these simonim revolve around being birds of prey. All birds of prey, b'derech klal, I think that's taka lamaisa, but birds of prey are generally not kosher. So, Amru Chacham, kol oif hadoiris tameh. Any oif that claws is tameh. Not necessarily the clawing that we saw before that injects poison, but the Rishonim have all different kinds of pshatim, what exactly doiris is. Kol sheyesh lo etzba yisera. Any animal, on the other hand, any bird that has an extra finger, meaning instead of having just claws, or I don't know what those things are called, the toes that stick out from the claws, I guess, that stick out from the front of the bird's foot. It also has one sticking out in the back. V'zefek, if it has the crop, which is right out of the esophagus, where birds store their food with pebbles to crush it. V'kovnoi niklaf, and its gizzard is able to be peeled, tar. If it has these three simonim, it's tar. He says an additional siman for an oif tameh, in addition to being dairis, that if its legs, if its toes or claws are situated, that some are going forwards and some are going back, so they're separated, it's tameh, because that's used for carrying away prey. Okay, so that's the birds. By grasshoppers. There are really four categories of kosher animals. There are the animals, right? Behemoths and chayas. There are the oifus, the birds. There are the dogim, are the fish. And then the chagavim, the grasshoppers. Grasshoppers are their own category of kosher food. Ubechagavim. So there's a pasuk about chagavim. The Torah says about chagavim, ezet techelu mikol sheretz ha'oif ha'hoilach al arba. This is what you can eat from every sheretz ha'oif. It means a flying insect that goes on four. It has to have so that's we're going to see. It has to have four legs. Ashaloi kra'ayim mimal l'raglav, that has legs for jumping on top of those legs. L'nata b'hen al aretz, to bounce on the earth. Okay, so Zok the Mishnah, B'chalgim kol sheyesh li arba raglayim, anything that has four legs, v'arba knafayim, and four wings. It has the grasshoppers have small wings. They're not just legs for jumping; they also have small wings. The kartzulim is what the pasuk mentioned. These jumping legs. Uknaf of chayfen esrubai, and it's the wings cover most of the body. That's a kosher grasshopper. Lamaisa, unless we have halacha lamaisa, because it's hard to find. It's not clear exactly where these legs are supposed to be attached. The way the Gemara describes it, that they have to be in front of the legs, is not reflected in the way they usually are constructed. So therefore, we're not confident to say that anything based on the pasuk is kosher. It has to be that there's a messiah to use it.
So we have four legs plus the jumping legs, total of six?
Yeah. Plus the wings, plus four wings.
That's the wings.
Rabbi Yosi Aimer, Ushmoy Chagav. The whole class of kosher grasshoppers is called a chagav. It means it's a little strange because the pasuk we just quoted had three different types that the Torah mentions, but chagav is he says. It's an interesting thing that he says the name makes it kosher. If it's not called a chagav, which is also used as a generic name for grasshoppers, it's not kosher. Okay, and finally, dogim kol sheyesh lo snapi v'kaskeshas. What is snapi v'kaskeshas? So Yehuda Aimer shnei kaskashim. You have to have two kaskashim, which gives it away. Kaskashim are the snapi rechad and one snapi. Ve'eloin kaskashim hakfuam boy. The kashkashkim are the scales that are fixed on the fish. Snapirin hapayrich behen, and the snapir are the fins that are used to get around. So the Gemara, Tan Rabban, Elohin simone behema. These are the simonim of a behema. Kol behema mafreses parsa. This is the pasuk that we read before. Kol behema mafreses parsa v'sheretz sasha shtei parsos maligera behema oisa teichelu. Zaktim Gemara. Kol behema shemalagera b'yadua she'en le'shinayim l'mayla. Any behema that chews its cud, you know that it doesn't have upper teeth. That doesn't mean the molars that it chews with. It doesn't mean it means it doesn't have front incisors. Those pointy teeth that you see by a wolf. You won't see that by a cow or by a sheep. It has flat teeth all around. Utahira. Since it doesn't have these incisors, it's tar. Safek Gemara, Klalahu, Vari Gamal, the Malageruhu. A Gamal is, you're saying that any animal that's a Malagera is not going to have these front teeth, and therefore it's going to be kosher. But a Gamal is Malagera, the English Shinaim Lamayl, therefore it doesn't have teeth on top, the Tame, and even so it's Tame because it doesn't have split hooves. So Gamal Nivi Isle. Even though it doesn't have incisors, those sharp teeth, it has the canines, which are, not molars, but they're teeth made for cutting. In fact, the Mara, okay, so fine. You said that that has some teeth. Bahari ben Gamal the Nivi Nami, let's say. What about when a camel is young that it doesn't have Nivi? This is all the Gemara is gonna get to how this is relevant to us. That means what the Gemara really is getting at is what can you use to identify which animals are kosher and which are not. But it's all going at it backwards. And the Gemara will soon ask the question, why are we looking at a secondary characteristic of whether it has teeth? Let's, say if it's Malagera, then it doesn't have teeth. Why don't we just look at whether it's Malagera now? Besu Hari Shafam Varnavas the Malagera. different types of rabbits. If anyone ever watched Bugs Bunny, we know they have plenty of teeth with tmein, and even so they're tamei. They don't have hooves at all. But what are we talking about? We're saying whether it's a malagera will tell you whether it has teeth, and then we'll be able to know that the shinayim is not one of the qualifications of pasuk. Pasuk says it's malagera. Elahokikama. The other way around. Kol behema she'ein lo shinayim lamailo. Any behema that doesn't have teeth on top, you do a she malas gera. Then you know that it's malagera mafresis parsa u'tohira. That's how you'll know that it's tar. For the livdik the parsa v'isel. Why don't we just check the hooves? Going to parsa to chatuchas. We're talking about in a case you found an animal. I guess it was clear that it was shechted properly, but its feet were chopped off. So you know that it was shechted properly, but you don't know, but it doesn't have any feet anymore. You could check it. You find a behema that its legs were chopped off, its feet were chopped off. You check its mouth. If it doesn't have upper teeth, then you know that it's a tar animal. Then you know it's a tummy animal. However, you have to be able to recognize that it's not a gomel, because a gomel is the exception. A gomel is a ruminant, so therefore it doesn't have these teeth. So therefore, even if you see that you don't know, you can't check the feet, and you see that it doesn't have teeth. If you were confident that if it was a gomel, you would recognize it, then you could eat it. Gemara, gomel niviusle. What are you worried about a gomel? A gomel does have these, not incisors, but it has canines. So if it has those nivi, you should know you can't eat it. El wavachi yakir ben gomel. You have to not recognize the grown gomel. You have to recognize the baby gomel, because that doesn't even have the nivi. It's a little hard to understand this question. The Gemara is assuming if there's a ben gomel that doesn't have teeth, so just let's say you recognize the ben gomel, but what if there's another animal that's not like that? How could the Gemara be confident there's not some animal somewhere in the wilds of Borneo that is similar to the ben gomel, but you won't recognize it, and it's not kosher? So the Torah says the gomel is not kosher, even though it's a malageira. Shalit by lami yedei she'en lecha davar mala. The person who rules the Rebbeinu Shalom who rules the world, and he knows everything, and he knows she'en lecha davar malageira v'tamei ele gomel. The only thing that is a ruminant and is still tamei is the camel. Lefikach parat by akasav who. That's the Torah said who, to tell you that only if you know that it's a gomel, if it's missing its teeth, and you could see it's not a gomel, you could be confident in eating it. Very hard. I don't understand the case. You find this shechted animal in the midbar, that you could tell that it was kosher. Like you have to be baidik, right? You have to check that there was no problems with the. I guess maybe you could check it. You found it had just been shechted. But how do you know he's not shaya when he cut the throat? Or maybe someone found an animal, he shechted it, and before he could check the feet, someone cut them off and threw them away. That's the case, maybe. He found an animal whose mouth was mutilated, so you couldn't tell whether it had these teeth. You check its hooves. In stukais, if they're split, then he knows that it's tar. If not, it's tamil. As long as he knows it's not a chazir. A chazir has split hooves, even though it doesn't chew its cud, and it's obviously not kosher. We have the same problem. What if there's another animal similar to chazir? That can't be done by bishmal. It's a chazir kimafis parsu. Shalit by lama yedeh she'en l'chadav she'mafis parsu v'tamei el chazir. The Baruch Shalom knows. He looked in the world and he knows there's nothing besides a chazir that doesn't chew its cud but has split hooves. Lefikach part by a kasav who. That's why the Torah said who. You can't check its mouth. It's mutilated. And it's it checks its basar. The Gemara is going to say later on which basar. If the basar has striations that go both up and down, you do a sheet tire. You know that's tire. That's only a siman that's found on a kosher animal. There's a new siman that you never knew about before. You do a sheet and if it doesn't have that, it's tamei. As long as you recognize the wild donkey, which does have these striations, but is not kosher. Maybe there's something similar to the wild donkey. We have a halacha l'moshe misinai that there's nothing besides the wild donkey that has the sin. What does it mean you check the basar? The kamfeya okets, which we tights as the underneath the okets, underneath the tail, the spot of right over there. That's the spot where you can tell what this kind of striations, this directions of the muscles that indicate that it's kosher. Tana Rabban, elu hen simane chaya. These are simanim of a chaya as opposed to a behemoth. What difference does it make? They both have the same dinim as far as what's kosher. Why are we determining what's a chaya? Amar of Zera, lahater chalva. To be mater the chalev. We know that the chalev of a chaya is kosher. The chalev of a behemoth is not allowed to be eaten. These are the simanim of chaya that its chalev is mutter. Kol sheyeshloi karanimu tlafim. Those that have a karen, as we're going to see in the Gemara, it's going to be a very, very specific type of horn. Utlafim, Rashi's teaches tlafim tzipurne haproses. It's like nail-like long split hooves. Right? We're talking about this is all within kosher animals. They're all split, but these are kind of like nail-like type of indications. So it's not like a domesticated animal. If it has horns, if it has the horns, you don't have to check the feet. But even if it has these pointed hooves, you can't. It's not dispositive. You still have to check the horns. The karish. Karish is a kind of some kind of goat. We'll see later on. Even though it only has one karen, and that it seems is more indicative of a domesticated animal, right? They change it from mutter to chelva mutter. It's still going to be treated as a chaya, that its chaylev is going to be mutter.
So we're saying that a kosher animal has to have horns?
No. We're not distinguishing between kosher and non-kosher. These are all kosher animals, but there's a difference about the chaylev, certain fats in an animal, that it depends on whether it's wild or domesticated. So a goat, for example, or a deer, these are wild animals. The chaylev is mutter. It's hard to remember because it's counterintuitive. The wild animals are more kosher than the domesticated animals. I'm sorry, a goat is a domesticated animal. Let's say like a deer or like these wild antelopes. I don't know the names of all the different things, but the wild animals that are kosher, you're allowed to eat their chaylev. So we're trying to say.
So what does it have to do with horns?
So we're going to say specific kind of horns tell us which ones are wild and which are domesticated. Those are the two simonim. It's going to be a lot of details about these horns, exactly what these horns are. Specific type of horns tell us that they're wild as opposed to domesticated. If you find an animal that you don't know what it is, yeah, we're giving you guideposts. We're giving you rules that you could determine whether the chelav of that animal is mutter or not, whether it's a chay or a behem. Is this really a rule? It has both horns and it has these pointed split hooves. A goat is a domesticated animal, and therefore the chelav is also. So Gemara, kruchospina. You need not just horns, the horns have to be layered horns. It has to mean like, I picture it like these trees that, they grow every year. These have to be horns that add on layers every year. Barishar de kruchos. What about a cow? That is kruchos, b'chal b'yasser. Even though it's kruchos, it's still chava. You're saying that a horn that is layered indicates that it's a chaya, but a cow is as domesticated an animal as there is. It's chava yasser. So how could you say a horn is it? And the cows have these layered horns? Charukas binin. No, it's not enough. You also need charukas that it has like grooves. Muloyis pegimas v'charitzin. It has holes and like ditches or engraved like I guess ridges in it. So unless it has that, if it needs that in order to be classified as a chaya. The charukos that it does have the ridges. The chal b'yasser. Zakt Gemara mufutzolis bina. No, you need that it should be also branched. If it look like a deer's antler, a deer is obviously a chaya. It branch its horns, or a moose. They all have branched out horns. That shows you that it's a chaya. Bahari tzvi, the ein mufutzalis. What about a tzvi that's not mufutzel? It's not branched out. So Rashi asked the obvious question. Bahari tzvi the ein mufutzalis lo yadana mai ka'amar. Obviously, deer have antlers, right? Everyone goes out to try to shoot a 12-point buck. That the word tzvi does not have the same connotation as it had in the time of the Gemara. It was the Steinbach. That's what they called the tzvi. We use tzvi as a generic term to include, I guess, our Bambi, but they used it to refer to this single-horned animal that was not mafutzel, and that's certainly a chaya, b'chal mutter. So the Gemara, chaduras bina. In addition, you need that it should be the horn should be chaduras. What is chaduras? Rashi, agulais shemati. Has to be rounded as opposed to flat. So we have a lot of requirements, and it's not clear which ones were dropped and which ones are still in effect. So we need rounded in order for it to be a chaya. Right. So if it's rounded, even though it's not mefutzalis, if it's, so the Gemara sort of tries to give us a little bit of a roundup. If it's branched off, that's certainly a raya that it's a chaya. There's no domesticated animal that has branched horns. Where it's not branched off, it has to be layered, it has to be rounded, and it has to be ridged. And that's the Gemara now all of a sudden sticks in another requirement that the mivla chirkayu Charitzei kufa semuchim uvloim zeh. They have to be near each other. The ridges, it can't be spread out. Zakamar v'hainu sveika de eze karkos. And this is the suffix of a certain type of goat, the karkos goat, that it's not clear whether it's the Chacham, the Amoraim argue about it, say since it has chaduros and it has chaduros and charukos, it has ridges and rounded, therefore it's a chaya, but it lacks kruchos. The question is, do you need all three of them? Or do you say, no, but since it's called a kind of aiz, it's a kind of goat, it's not a chaya, but rather it's a behema. And therefore it's going to be the chaylev is aser. Hahi eze korchos, the Havibei Reish Galusa. There was such one of these goats that were besafik in the Hasa Reish Galusa. The Akamaloi Tzina, the Tarbamine. They harvested a whole big thing of its chaylev. V'chay aser, Rav Shmuel Breder Vavo Achamine. Rav Chai said it's aser. Rav Shmuel Breder the Rebbe Avo said it's kosher. Karen Afshe mi pri piish tishaveya bitnai. From the fruits of his mouth, his stomach's going to be full, meaning because of his knowledge, he was able to be matir. Sholchem mitom hilchos kavase de Shmuel Breder Bevo. They said the halach is like Shmuel Breder Bevo, that it's mutar v'zor b'reinu achoy shemeir ein goylehu. However, you have to be careful not to do it in front of Rabbeinu Achoy, because he was the Reish Galusa, or not the Reish Galusa, but he was the Gadol Hadar in Galus, and you have to be respectful of his opinion. Amar Rav Yehuda, Keresh Tavia de Bei Eloi, the Keresh, which we mentioned in the Gemara before, is the deer of Bei Eloi, from a place Bei Eloi. Tigris Arya de Bei Eloi, and Tigris is the line of Bei Eloi, which we're going to see soon with very, very large versions of these animals. Amar of Kahana, Teisha Amsa Habi Bein Una Leuna de Arya, de Bei Eloi. There were 9 amas between, I think, the ears or the eyes of the lion from Bei Eloi. Amar Rav Yosef, Sitzer Amsa Habi Mashka de Tavi de Bei Eloi. And the length of this deer, Tavi de Bei Eloi, was 16 amas long. Your Rebbeinu Shalom is like a lion. The Chsev Arya Sha'ag Mila Yareya. Rebbeinu Shalom is like a roaring lion. Who are we not feared? My Ravusha, Parsha Katal Arya. What's so great about a lion? A hunter can kill a lion. Amalei Lav Kahai Arya Misil Ka Arya Debei Elohim Misil. The Rebbeinu Shalom is not like a regular lion. He's like the Arya, the Bei Eloi that nobody can kill. Amalei beinin de mechsel He said, I need to see this lion. Amalei lematzos chazosle. He said, it's not possible for you to see it. You can't. It's not tameable, and you can't be brought anywhere near humans. Amalei ivra chazinale. He said, I need to see it. Bo rachmi. So he davened. It's akamiduchta, and the Rebbeinu Shalom made a nest that this Arya de Bei boy was brought to the Keser. When it came within 400 parsois, Niim Chadkala, it made one roar, Epilu Kol Mavrasa, all the women who were bearing children, who were pregnant, were miscarried. The Shura de Roimi Nafel, and the pillars of Rome collapsed. Adamechet Klas Meya Parsi, when it came within 300 Parsi, Niyam Kala Achrina made another noise. Noter Kiche V'Sheni Gavri. People's teeth fell out of their mouths. Ba'afu Nafel Mikurse La'ara, and even the Caesar fell off of his throne. Amalei B'Metusa Minach Boy Rachman Le De Lahadel Duchte. Go ask that it should return to its place. Boy Rachman V'Hadel Le Lashe, and return to its place. Amalei Keseler Bishua Ben Chananya. B'Ine De Ichsil Lelikaichu. I need to see the Rebbeinu Shalom. Amalei Lamatzos Chazosle. He said you can't see it. Amalei Ivra Chazinale. I must see it. Azul Ukma Lahadi Yuma Betkufas Tamas. He stood him outside during the summer. Amalei Stakelbei. said, go look at the sun. Amalei la mitzina. He said, I can't look at the sun. Amalei yumach dechad mishemshi the kaimikami kutshabrichu. The this is just one of the servants. This day is just one of the sun is just one of the Rebbeinu Shalom servants. Amalei mitzilus takula be shchina lekoshkein. Certainly you can't see the Rebbeinu Shalom. Amalei kesel lebi shub chananya. Beina de itzis leina hama lekaycho. I need to prepare a feast for the Rebbeinu Shalom. I said, I'm very wealthy. I can afford it. Amalei l'motzis. He said, it's not possible. Amai, l'motzis amai nefishichol yasayu. The Rebbeinu Shalom's legions are too great. He has too many retainers. You're not going to be able to take care of all of them. Amalei ivra. He said, I'm insisting. I'm going to do it. Amalei poik tzviya legida de revisa. The Richa Alma, go on the banks of the river where there's plenty of room. Tarach Shisiyarche Kaita, he worked on it a whole summer. Asa Zika, Kanse Liyama, and a wind came and it swept it all into the ocean. Tarach Shisiyarche Disi Suvusa, he worked on it through the winter. Asa Mitra Tave Biyama, and rain came and it swept it into the ocean. Amle Maihai. The Caesar asked him, why does the Rebbe keep destroying what I do? This was just, you were feeding the Rebbe Shalom's retainers, like his advanced scouting team that comes before him. That's what you were doing. You were feeding them. This is just his whole main retinue is not ready to come yet. He said, if so, it's taka too much for me. The Rebbeinu Shalom is like a creator. He puts roofs with water over as an attic. So I want him to make for me what do you call it? A misuraisa is something used to work with cloth, to work with linen, with thread. I want the Rebbe to make that for me. Amalei l'chai, he says, okay. Boy rachmi Allah, he davened for her that she should get it. The Inga, she got hit with leprosy. Usva b'shuka d'roimi. What they used to do is someone who got leprosy, they'd put them into the marketplace in Rome. V'lavi misuraisa. They gave her this implement. Davenihigi, because the minig was the chol the min go b'roimi. Anyone who was stricken in Rome, Yavel Misaraisa, Vyasa Beshuka, they would sit in the marketplace, the sauce of the loy, and they would take apart, they use that tool to take apart cloth, so people would pray for them. Yumachan have a kilafasam. One day she was sitting, Rabbi Shua was passing by there. Amallah, he saw that she was doing this. Amallah, Shapirta Misrais the Yavel Alakai, you happy with the beautiful shaparus, what do you call it? Steraisa that the Rebbe gave you. Amallah, Emalei Lekecha Lishko Madi Yavle. Tell him to take back what he gave. This is not what she had in mind. Amallah, Elakandida, Miyav Yav Mishkal Ishakal. The Rebbe gives, but he doesn't take back. He's not an Indian giver. So you're stuck with your situation. Everyone's welcome to drawing their own conclusions from these Gemaras. I don't have anything really substantial to add to it.